Now to the double murder in Wilson County. We're learning the suspect is charged with killing his own brother and his mother. Police identifying the victims as 50-year-old Daron Jenkins and her 15-year-old son, Daryn Cox. Jenkins' 25-year-old son, Daron Jenkins, is now charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The victims were found inside a home yesterday evening on Snowden Drive. Cindy Bay has new reaction from the family.
Loved ones are reeling from the death of a mother and son who police say were found dead inside their Wilson home on Monday.
She was a very sweet person. Always smiled. I can see her smile right now. She always smiled.
Juanelia Carnegie lives next door to her cousin Daron Jenkins, who was allegedly killed by her older son, 25-year-old Daron Jenkins. Jenkins is also accused of killing his 15-year-old brother.
"My baby is home. Lord, I thank you." That's what Daron Jenkins shared with her friends and family on Facebook on March 25, 2025. 8 simple words, but they held the weight of 3 long years filled with fear, hope, and relentless faith. To her, those words weren't just an update, they were a prayer answered, a sign that her broken family was on the mend. After all the heartache, her son was finally free. She saw a future unfolding, one where the pain of the past could finally be left behind. But less than a week later, that future would be erased most unimaginably. Just 6 days later, red and blue lights washed over Snowden Drive in Wilson, North Carolina. Police cruisers lined the street. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the breeze. Neighbors stepped onto their porches, covering their mouths in shock as the unimaginable unfolded before their eyes. 2 lifeless bodies were removed from the Jenkins household. One belonged to Dana. The other, heartbreakingly, was her 15-year-old son, Daryn Cox. And the person responsible for both deaths? The very son she had just welcomed back into her home. The same man she believed had changed. This wasn't a burglary. It wasn't some stranger committing a senseless act of violence. It was something far more chilling. A family reunion that turned into a nightmare. A mother's unwavering belief in redemption cost her everything. Within 1 week, love transformed into loss, and hope turned into horror. So the question must be asked, what drives someone to kill their mother and younger brother? What signs went unnoticed or ignored? How does a household shift from celebration to tragedy in under 7 days? This is the heartbreaking true crime case of Daron Jenkins and her youngest son, Daryn Cox. A story that forces us to examine the risks of misplaced faith, the dangers of denial, and what happens when the threat is already living under your roof. Stay with me. The truth begins long before the first 911 call was made. If you're drawn to in-depth true crime documentaries that don't just scratch the surface but dig into the people, psychology, and facts behind these tragedies, hit that like button and subscribe. We release new stories daily, each more gripping and sobering than the last. Before she became the subject of news reports and memorials, Daron Jenkins was simply known as a woman of faith and compassion. Born and raised in Wilson, North Carolina, Dana was deeply rooted in her community. She worked full-time, stayed active at Mount Moriah Community Church, and was known for going out of her way to help anyone in need, whether that meant cooking meals for a sick neighbor, giving someone a ride, or simply being there with a warm hug and a kind word. Dana didn't just talk about her beliefs, she lived them. Her kindness was tangible, her faith unwavering. The kind of woman who never forgot a birthday, who checked in even when you didn't ask, who always left people better than she found them. Her 2 sons, Daron Jenkins and Daryn Cox, were her entire world. Life hadn't always been easy, but she gave her boys everything she had. Her youngest, Daryn Cox, was her heart, a bright, funny, kind teenager who never missed a chance to make his mom smile. He was the kind of kid who didn't mind sticking around after church to clean up, who made people laugh while waiting in line at the store, who always found the light in any moment. Their bond was unbreakable, a deep love rooted in years of shared laughter, tears, and unwavering loyalty. Her oldest son, Daron Jenkins, however, had walked a different path. He'd been in and out of trouble with the law, served time in prison, and struggled with behavior that caused nothing but sleepless nights for his mother. Still, Dana never abandoned him. She visited him behind bars, sent letters filled with encouragement, and held onto the belief that redemption was possible. To her, no one was ever beyond saving. She saw not a criminal but a lost soul in need of healing. But that same belief, that deep, unwavering hope, would ultimately cost her more than she ever imagined. While Dana was the glue that held her family together, Daron Cox was its light. At just 15, he stood out for all the right reasons. Teachers saw his leadership potential. Classmates admired his kindness and humility. His smile was magnetic. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but his quiet confidence left a lasting impression. At Bedingfield High School, he was a model student, consistently on the honor roll and involved in extracurriculars. At church, he played music, volunteered with the youth ministry, and even ran tech for services. People often said, "That boy's going places." And when they said that, they meant it. His connection with Dana went deeper than most parent-child relationships. They were best friends in many ways, talking about everything, laughing at the same jokes, and sharing dreams for the future. She'd say often that her youngest gave her purpose. He reminded her that even in life's hardest moments, love could still shine through. But Daron Cox would become more than just a victim. He would be caught in the crossfire between his mother's love and his brother's chaos. A promising future, extinguished far too soon. And everything changed the day Daron Jenkins walked back through the door. That Tuesday was supposed to be a turning point. After 3 long years, Daron Jenkins was coming home. Dana spent the day preparing, cooking his favorite food, cleaning every corner of the house, and hanging decorations that read, "Welcome Home." She truly believed this marked a new beginning, a clean slate. She had picked him up herself, eyes full of tears and arms wide open. For Dana, it was the moment her family became whole again. But the reality was far darker. Daron Jenkins wasn't returning as a man transformed. His release wasn't based on rehabilitation. He hadn't earned parole. He was released because his sentence had reached its legal end. His criminal record was alarming. At 19, he was arrested for theft from church parking lots. 2 years later, he broke into a home and stole firearms. His time in prison wasn't peaceful. Disciplinary records showed multiple violent incidents, fights with other inmates, threats against staff, and repeated behavioral violations. Twice, he was denied early release due to his aggression. Despite all this, Dana clung to the belief that her son could still be saved. When he walked into the house on Snowden Drive, the entire family celebrated. There were balloons on the porch and a feast waiting inside. Photos from that day show a beaming Dana wrapped around her son. But if you looked closely, you'd see something off. While everyone else smiled, Daron Jenkins looked detached, cold, empty, unreadable. His expression was chilling, his eyes distant. He didn't look like someone filled with joy. He looked like someone carrying something dark inside. That feeling wasn't just seen, it was felt. Cousins, friends, even neighbors whispered afterward that something wasn't right. He didn't look like he was back from prison, one said. He looked like he never left. Juanita, Dana's cousin, recalled thinking, "He's going to do something. I don't know what, but I felt it."
You could see it, the look. It told you everything. But I had no idea that you was getting ready to do what you did.
Another relative said he seemed like someone at war with the world, and maybe with himself. And the warning signs didn't stop at a cold expression. In the days following his return, Daron Jenkins' behavior continued to raise red flags. He was irritable, distant and restless. He isolated himself, often pacing alone outside or locking himself in his room. People who came by the house said the air felt tense, like everyone was walking on eggshells. But Dana, in her grace and hope, never voiced concern. If she felt uneasy, she didn't show it. She wanted so badly to believe that love could smooth the edges of his rage, that a warm meal and a soft place to land could undo years of bitterness. But darkness doesn't disappear just because you pray it away. And as the days passed, that darkness began to spill over. In the days after Daron Jenkins returned home, the mood inside the house on Snowden Drive began to shift. The warmth that had once felt genuine now seemed forced, almost fragile. Joy gave way to unease, though no one said it out loud. At first, it was subtle. Daron rarely spoke, keeping to himself as he roamed the house late at night. He'd check locks, open and close doors without reason, and mumble things under his breath. Family members noticed how he'd stop and stare into the yard for long stretches, frozen in place, eyes unfocused. Sometimes he'd break off mid-sentence, his expression going blank before muttering a quick, "I'm good," and walking away. To those around him, he seemed paranoid, unstable, like someone on the verge of something dark. Some relatives described him as jittery, like a fuse waiting to blow. One night, someone caught him silently standing in the hallway outside a bedroom door, not moving, not speaking, just watching. No one dared to ask why. Then came the injury. One morning, Daryn appeared with his hand crudely wrapped in a cloth bandage. When asked about it, he simply shrugged. The silence that followed said more than any answer could have. Still, no one challenged him. No one confronted him or pressed for details. But because of Dana. Because she was so thrilled to have him home. She had prayed for this reunion, clung to it like a lifeline. And no one wanted to be the one to cast doubt on her hope. So even when Daryn asked her for $200 for a few things, she gave it to him without question, because that's what mothers do. But according to investigators, that money was used to purchase bleach, duct tape, and a hunting knife. The receipt was dated just days before the murders. Those closest to the family admitted they saw the signs. They felt them. But they chose silence over confrontation. One cousin later confessed, "I always feared this day would come. You could see it in him. Something was wrong." Yet no one said anything. Dana believed her son had changed, and the rest of the family couldn't bring themselves to shatter her illusion. That silence proved deadly. March 31, 2025. A Monday like any other until it wasn't. Around 5:30 p.m., Wilson County Emergency Dispatch received a strange call. The voice on the other end was disoriented, difficult to understand, but one thing was clear: something was terribly wrong. Officers were dispatched to the same home on Snowden Drive that had, just 6 days earlier, been filled with balloons and celebration. From the outside, everything seemed normal. Dana's car sat in the driveway. The porch light glowed softly. There were no broken windows, no sounds of distress, just an eerie stillness. Once officers forced entry, the scene inside told a story no one could forget. Dana Jenkins, age 50, and her 15-year-old son Daryn Cox were found dead. Both had been stabbed multiple times. Authorities described the killings as brutal, not the result of a momentary outburst, but something methodical and deeply violent. Dana's body was found near the front of the house. She had taken the brunt of the attack. Daryn was discovered farther inside, suggesting he tried to escape. He didn't make it. Veteran officers, no strangers to tragedy, were shaken. One later remarked that the level of violence resembled something from a war zone, not a family home. But perhaps most disturbing of all was what came next. Daron Jenkins, the 25-year-old son Dana had so joyfully welcomed back, was still at the scene. He hadn't tried to run or hide. There was no panic, no resistance when officers arrested him. He was calm, almost detached. That same night, he was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and booked into the Wilson County Jail without bond. Just days before, Dana had shared with the world her joy at having her son home. Now, the town of Wilson was mourning her death at his hands, and the loss of her youngest son, Daryn Cox, a boy full of promise and light. News of the double homicide spread rapidly, leaving the community stunned. Grief morphed into confusion as everyone tried to understand how a moment of reunion could spiral into unimaginable horror. For those who knew Dana, it was especially devastating. She had given everything to her family. She believed in second chances. That belief had cost her life, and Daryn's too. The murders left a deep scar on Wilson. Dana and Daryn weren't just names in a headline. They were familiar faces, fixtures of the community. Dana's faith had touched countless lives. Daryn's energy had brightened classrooms and church services alike. Their loss was personal. At Mount Moriah Community Church, where both had worshipped, the response was immediate. Bishop Sherman Blandon called an emergency prayer service the very next night. The sanctuary filled within minutes. The crowd was silent, devastated. Bishop Blandon, his voice trembling, addressed the congregation, "Even as a man of faith, I have questions." Many wept openly. Others sat in stunned silence, clutching photos or whispering prayers. Just a week earlier, Dana had been here, smiling, hopeful, full of grace. Now, her image rested on a memorial table.
They loved us, we loved them, especially Daryn. He meant the world to all of us. Our teens here, they're grieving heavily.
The church's youth group gathered to mourn Daryn Cox, the same boy who had helped run lights and cameras during Sunday service. His friends sat in a circle, trying to make sense of a loss that felt too cruel to comprehend. At Beddingfield High School, Daryn's empty desk became a painful reminder of all that was lost. Teachers struggled to find words. Grief counselors were brought in to help students process the unimaginable. Online, tributes poured in. Photos, scripture, candle emojis, heartfelt messages. "He was the sweetest soul," one post read. Another said, "She loved that boy more than anything. Now they're gone together." On April 12th, just under 2 weeks after the murders, Dana Jenkins and Daryn Cox were laid to rest. Their funeral, held at Ellen Forbes OFWB Tabernacle, drew hundreds, friends, family, teachers, neighbors, and strangers who had been touched by their story. Pastor Damon Royal led the service, choosing to focus not on how their lives ended, but on how they were lived, with compassion, purpose, and love. The next day, they were buried side by side at Rest Haven Cemetery. As the final prayers were spoken and the flowers placed gently on the fresh earth, it became clear this wasn't just a funeral, it was a communal heartbreak. And while Wilson tried to begin the long process of healing, the focus began to shift. No longer just how it happened, but why. On April 1st, just one day after the murders, Daron Jenkins made his first court appearance. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He didn't glance at the people in the gallery, many of them family members in shock, clinging to each other for support. He simply stared straight ahead, emotionless, as the judge read the charges. 2 counts of first-degree murder. The courtroom was thick with silence, a silence heavy with disbelief and pain. Prosecutors were quick to make their stance clear. This was no heat-of-the-moment tragedy. This was premeditated, calculated, deliberate. Assistant District Attorney Holly Rebel pointed to Daryn's criminal past and the disturbing violence of the crime, pushing for the highest possible consequences. Bail was denied entirely. A mother's faith. A community's silence. A family destroyed from within. This wasn't just a murder. It was a betrayal that left Wilson forever changed. And as the legal system moves forward, one truth remains. Some wounds go deeper than justice can reach. As investigators peeled back the layers of the case, the darkness surrounding it grew even deeper. Daron Jenkins wasn't a man reformed, far from it. He had been denied parole twice, not just for minor infractions but due to repeated aggression and misconduct behind bars. His release wasn't a reflection of rehabilitation, but the result of a legal technicality. He had simply run out the clock. But nothing prepared detectives for what they uncovered next. According to court filings, Dana Jenkins had a life insurance policy through her job. It wasn't extravagant, but it was enough to catch the attention of someone desperate. The listed beneficiary? Daron Jenkins. The same son she welcomed home with warmth, home-cooked meals, and faith-driven hope may have seen her not as a mother, but as a means to an end. Investigators believe Daryn intended to make the crime look random. He could have faked a break-in, staged chaos, and vanished into the night. Had he succeeded, that insurance payout might have been his. But was it just about money? There was another theory, a far more emotional one. Perhaps Daryn's resentment had been simmering for years. Maybe he envied the way Dana had raised his younger brother, with structure, love, and faith. Daryn might have seen in that boy everything he had lost, or never had. Was this about being replaced, or never truly belonging? The prosecution saw no confusion in his motives. They described his actions as calculated. The purchases he made beforehand, the patterns of surveillance, his cold silence in the days leading up to the attack. This wasn't an outburst. This was a slow, deliberate betrayal, one that left a mother dead, a brother murdered, and a community in pieces. And now, as the case prepares for trial, one painful truth remains. No verdict can bring back what was lost. Dana Jenkins believed in redemption. She lived by it. She believed that broken people could heal, that those who fell could be lifted again through faith, family, and forgiveness. She never stopped believing in her son, even when he gave her every reason to. And for that belief, she paid the ultimate price. In a final, haunting irony, it was the very hands that once embraced him, that packed care packages for him in prison, that held him as a child, those were the hands he turned against. Dana's younger son, just 15, was never supposed to be caught in the middle. But he became the collateral damage of Daryn's rage and Dana's unwavering hope. And the most crushing part? It was all preventable. Daryn's record wasn't buried. It was filled with red flags, violent outbursts, psychological concerns, failed parole attempts. Yet when the system released him, there were no safeguards, no oversight, no warning to the family waiting for him at home. No therapy. No transitional monitoring. Just a quiet release and a dangerous man heading home. Dana never stood a chance. But she's not alone in this tragic pattern. Across the country, mothers, fathers, siblings, entire families are opening their doors to loved ones fresh out of prison, believing that love can fix what years of damage have done. They're hoping. They're trusting. But sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes the person you want to save is already too far gone. Sometimes they never come back. We have to stop mistaking quiet for peace. We must stop treating second chances as guaranteed redemptions. Because Dana didn't fail. Her community did. The justice system did. And so did we by not speaking up when the signs were clear. In the end, it took just 6 days. From the moment Daryn walked through that door to the moment both Dana and her youngest son were gone. 6 days. A family reunion turned obituary in less than a week. May we never forget the warning signs again. If this case moved you or left you shaken, be sure to subscribe to True Crimes Venue and turn on notifications. We bring you haunting stories that echo long after the headlines fade. Check the playlist in the description for more cases that challenge what you think you know.